Hi, I'm Luna, and this is Luna Report. A simple technician saved an elite yacht from total destruction. But instead of gratitude, she faced only mockery and cruelty. Yet among the noise and laughter, there was one man who said nothing, just watched in silence. Who was he? And what happened next? Find out tonight on Luna Report. Back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Luna. Back to the studio. And we begin. The moon over Miami cast a diamond shimmer across the water as the Artemis, a floating palace of sleek steel and glass, pulled into the private marina. Valets in white gloves and deckhands in pressed uniforms lined the pier. This wasn't a party, it was a spectacle. A curated guest list of startup magnates, crypto millionaires, trust fund influencers, and Wall Street prodigies, all invited to toast their relevance beneath string lights and imported champagne. And into this light-steeped theater of power stepped Sky. She didn't belong here, not in the way the others did. She wore no designer labels, no glint of platinum or gold. Her navy overalls were faded, utility boots scuffed from real labor. Her dark hair was pulled into a fraying bun, strands clinging to her temple from the heat. No lashes, no contour, just a raw face and tired eyes that had seen more wiring and bulkheads than TikToks. She was a marine systems technician contracted by the event organizers to assist with the yacht's pre-departure checks, fix leaks, reset breakers, clean, be invisible. But invisibility was a luxury not granted to women like her. Before she could even set her bag down, one of the catering staff sneered at her from the steps. Whoa, guys, look what the tide dragged in. We've got ourselves a soaked alley rat. Sky paused. She didn't blink. Another voice, nasal and cruel. Hey, sweetheart, did you crawl out of the bilge? Because that hair says sewage and sadness. A third, louder, egging on the group. Somebody get her a plastic cup. She looks like she'd melt if she touched real glass. They laughed. They always laughed. Not because she was funny, but because cruelty was sport here. A contest of who could cut deeper quicker. Sky moved past them in silence, walking toward the aft maintenance hatch. But they followed predators bored with their own status, hungry for fresh blood. From the lounge deck above, guests began to notice. A woman with a face sculpted by filler and filters leaned over the railing. That one looks like she bites her nails for dinner. Cute. Should we feed her scraps? Laughter floated down like acid rain. Another guest, a man in a double-breasted cream blazer, called out, Hey, hold my Gucci bag, will you? You're used to carrying the weight of the world, right? Sky didn't answer. Her silence infuriated them more than any comeback could have. A bartender, passing her with a tray of crystal flutes, muttered just loud enough, I'm sorry, but you don't look like someone who should be seen on this boat. Sky didn't flinch. She simply unlatched the panel near the lower deck, her fingers moving with quiet precision. No one noticed the flicker in the fuel monitoring panel. No one cared about the distant knock of metal beneath the waterline. They only saw a girl who didn't belong. But the ship did. And it had just started whispering her name. Sky slipped below deck, the jeering above fading like static behind steel. Down here, the yacht hummed with life. Pipes pulsed, the ventilation system whirred, and the lights cast a sterile, indifferent glow. It felt more honest down here. The party might shimmer above, but this was where the truth lived. Rust, pressure gauges, and systems that didn't lie. She crouched beside the main panel near the engine bay, her fingers brushing the cooling unit. It was running hot, too hot. She reached for her scanner, but paused. There it was again. A low rhythmic clank. Not metal shifting naturally, but an impact, a foreign presence. Something hit the hull. She held her breath. Then it was gone. She ran diagnostics anyway, silent, fast. A spike in pressure readings near the intake valve. That wasn't supposed to happen. Upstairs, champagne glasses clinked. Beats dropped. A woman laughed, high and mocking. This party is so exclusive, even the crew is ugly chic now. Sky heard it through the intercom speaker, which someone had accidentally left open. The audio poured in like salt water. She didn't react. Instead, she traced the pipeline to the rear stabilizer. The vibration there was wrong. She noted it, then headed back up to the main deck to find a wrench and patch clamps. As she climbed out of the lower hatch, two waiters nearly tripped over her. Oh, she's still here, one smirked. I thought we flushed the ballast already. Careful, the other added. She might be contagious. I've heard poverty spreads by eye contact. They laughed like people who'd never been told no. Sky adjusted the strap on her tool bag and said nothing. Not when they blocked her path. Not when one of them mimed holding his nose like she stank. She moved past them. Inside the yacht's main corridor, the walls were glass and gold. The guests looked like gods in borrowed light. Air-kissed cheeks, sculpted jawlines, watches heavier than some mortgages. And no one saw her. They never did. until the ship shuddered. It was faint, but real. A low groaning rumble rolled underfoot. A few guests paused, then shrugged it off. Maybe the anchor, maybe just the waves. Sky didn't shrug. She moved. In the control bay, the alert lights were red but silent. Manual override disabled. That's not supposed to be possible, she thought. Then the second jolt hit. Louder. Deeper. Guests stopped talking. Someone spilled a flute of Prosecco. Sky turned. The engine room was taking on water, and no one, not a soul above deck, knew. The second jolt silenced the music. The deck lights flickered once. A few guests stumbled, grabbing at railings, laughing nervously. Probably just a champagne cork hitting the wrong valve, someone joked. Sky didn't laugh. She was already moving faster now, her boots pounding along the lower corridor toward the engine room. She passed a cluster of guests, peering over their sunglasses with idle curiosity. One woman stepped in her path, a velvet clutch in one hand and a sneer in the other. "Excuse me, do you mind? You're sweating on the marble." Sky dodged past without speaking. Below deck, the damage was unfolding. Water glistened like a mirror across the floor. The pump system hissed but didn't activate. Backup relays sat dormant. Error codes flashed like Morse code from the dead. She crouched beside the primary panel. Her fingers flew, switching to manual diagnostics, bypassing corrupted firmware. She muttered under her breath, recalibrating pressure differentials while plotting a reroute to the intake valve. This wasn't sabotage. This was neglect, a forgotten gasket, a cracked seal. No one cared about maintenance until the sea came knocking. She found the valve, reached for the manual override, and the lever stuck. Corroded! She wrapped her hands in her jacket sleeve and pulled hard. Nothing. Another slam echoed through the hull, this time unmistakable. Guests screamed above. Glass shattered. One man's voice rose. Is this a feature? Is this part of the party? Panic bloomed like rot in warm water. Sky leapt to the secondary panel and flipped open the last line of defense, the manual power switch to the bilge pump. Locked. Her breath stilled. This wasn't just a glitch. It was a systems cascade, and no one was coming. Sky tore open the pump housing with a wrench and found the feed tubes beginning to flood. She forced the lever with all her weight, the metal groaning, her fingers bleeding. A scream echoed from above. Sky yelled back, voice cutting through the floor. "Shut up and stay where you are!" Silence fell above. She cranked the backup generator, wires sparking under her hands. The pump roared to life. The water began to retreat. 3 minutes. It took only 3 minutes. Then the alarm screamed. Too late. But she was done waiting for permission. Above deck, the party had fractured into chaos. Lights flashed red. The ambient music, once chill and curated, now jittered and died in a crackle of feedback. Guests scrambled in heels and unbuttoned collars, clutching phones that offered no signal. Panic broke through designer polish, shouting, running, fists pounding on locked cabin doors. And then Sky appeared. No longer crawling under floorboards or ducking behind service panels, she stepped into the main atrium, soaked in salt water, her uniform torn, the sleeve tied tightly around a bleeding wrist. She didn't ask, she didn't beg. Everyone listened to me now. Her voice, hoarse but unshaken, sliced through the screaming like steel. The crowd froze, not out of respect, but shock. That girl! That girl! The bartender, white as the marble bar behind him, stared. "You," Sky said, pointing at him. "Shut off all exterior lighting. We're drawing current we don't need." He didn't move. She didn't wait. She threw down her wrench, reached into the nearest wall panel, and pulled the breaker herself. The lights snapped to emergency mode. Silence followed, thick and terrified. "You want to drown because you were too arrogant to listen to someone without a Rolex? Fine, but you've got 60 seconds before this system floods again." Someone gasped. A woman dropped her clutch. A man in a white linen suit said, "She's bluffing." Sky turned on him calmly. "The balance valve near the port stabilizer is jammed. We're 1.3 degrees off axis. You're listing already. Your real bluff was trusting automation." He sat down. Hard. Sky unzipped her jacket, revealing a small flashlight and a control key card attached to her chest harness, something no one had noticed until now. The bartender stepped forward, stammering, but she didn't look at him. "Because I built this model." That hit harder than the alarms. One of the crypto founders, the guy with 4 million followers and a yacht named after his girlfriend, blinked. "Wait, built? Like engineered?" Sky looked him dead in the eye. "I wrote the emergency manual for the Artemis line. Every system, every override, every failure scenario, which we are currently living." Gasps. A few guests staggered backward as if physically struck. Now, Sky barked, "Someone hold that Gucci bag and follow me to the ventilation controls. Manual mode, you've got 2 minutes." And they followed. The girl with no brand, no friends, no smile. The girl who was about to save them all. Sky moved like gravity itself had shifted in her favor, no longer beneath notice, but the only person who mattered. She stormed past toppled champagne flutes and shattered pride, issuing commands as alarms howled like wolves. "You, yes, you with the drone, drop it and secure the main hatch. If water hits the capacitor junction, we lose propulsion and emergency radio, go oh." The influencer didn't argue. His fingers fumbled with the drone controls, terrified. The bartender, the same one who elbowed her an hour ago, stood frozen beside the cocktail bar, staring at his hands like they might offer a reason. "Don't just stand there," Sky snapped. "Find the secondary pressure gauge. If it spikes, yell. Do not improvise." He nodded, trembling. Below deck again, Sky reached the ventilation chamber. The auto system was still unresponsive, manual mode only. The bolts were stiff, calcified from neglect. She dug in, shoulders braced, arms burning. It took everything in her not to scream. "Need a hand?" She looked back. The man with the Gucci bag had followed her. Quiet now, stripped of arrogance. His linen shirt clung to his chest in sweat-soaked folds. He looked human, afraid. She nodded. Together they twisted the final bolt. The valve cracked open with a metallic groan. The system hissed, then purred. Water pressure equalized. The tide of danger slowed. For a moment, the yacht breathed again. Back in the atrium, guests began emerging like dazed survivors. Some cried, some called loved ones. A few whispered her name as if she were a myth. One woman clutched her pearls and murmured, "I thought she was crew." She was crew. She was also the architect of their survival. When the backup communications panel blinked to life, Sky keyed in the distress signal, rerouted through the hidden reserve frequency only engineers ever knew about. The system answered. Emergency response, ETA 14 minutes. Too late to save their image. But just in time to realize who saved them. Sky stood silently, breath shallow, sweat slick on her forehead, the flashlight flickering now from dying battery. Someone tried to take a photo. She turned sharply. No cameras. The man with the Gucci bag, still standing beside her, lifted his hand. She said no. And for the first time that night, the crowd obeyed. The yacht floated still now, wounded but upright. Sky sat on the edge of the upper deck, her back to the skyline where Miami's towers blinked like indifferent gods. Her uniform clung damp to her spine. Her hands were blistered. Her silence finally was her own. Behind her, the crowd lingered in uneven pockets of disbelief. No one spoke above a whisper. Gone were the insults, the laughter, the cheap cruelty passed off as culture. Now they stood like survivors at a funeral of their ego. A medic team boarded quickly but quietly, stepping around broken glasses and deflated pride. They checked vitals, scanned logs, and asked questions. But all eyes kept drifting to her. She didn't acknowledge them. The man with the Gucci bag approached again, this time without it. He had no bravado left, no posture, just the key in his hand. Silver, old-fashioned, impossibly out of place among the digital locks and retina scans. He stopped a few feet from her. "This isn't a reward," he said softly. "It's ownership of the Artemis. I'm the original investor, and I've just filed the transfer." Sky looked at him, really looked. "You're joking." He shook his head. "You're the only person who knew how to stop the drowning. That's more value than any tech pitch I've sat through." She narrowed her eyes. "I'm not interested in favors." "It's not a favor," he said, voice tightening. "It's restitution." He held the key out. "And for the record," he added, "I'm cutting ties with every person who laid hands on you, every tongue that mocked you, every name whispered like you were dirt." Sky didn't take the key. "Not yet. I'm not like you," she said, her voice hoarse. "I wasn't raised in yachts. I came here to work. I wanted to disappear." The man, whose name she still didn't know, nodded. "That's why you deserve it more than any of us." He set the key beside her on the deck. No cameras, no press, just whined and guilt. As he turned to leave, he added without looking back, "And don't worry, this story won't be on social media, but they'll all remember it because now they know who they are." Sky stared at the key. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She just breathed like the yacht had when she saved it. By morning, the Artemis had been towed to a discreet harbor just outside the city's glossy perimeter. No news vans, no social media buzz, just the quiet hum of industry and correction. The fallout began immediately. The bartender who'd elbowed her, smirking once, arrived for his shift to find his access card void. No call, no notice, just silence, and a blank expression from the new manager. He stood outside the marina gate for hours, disbelief settling like sand in his throat. The waiters who'd mocked her, names scrubbed from event staffing databases, no more invites, no more yacht gigs. Whispers followed them from one luxury party to the next. Weren't they the ones who blacklisted? Gone. The yacht's event manager, who turned a blind eye to the cruelty, was called into a quiet meeting by her superiors. She emerged pale, papers in hand. A lawsuit for negligence and breach of contract. The party's sponsor had pulled out. The insurance claim flagged with preventable human failure. She was finished before lunch, but the ripples didn't stop there. The guests, the ones who tossed comments like knives, began receiving unexpected phone calls. Not angry, not public, just calm voices from partners, clients, investors. We're reviewing our relationship. Your name came up. It's concerning. One by one, the golden children of startup culture and digital celebrity found their contracts evaporating like mist. Invitations dried up. Collaborations vanished. Their inboxes filled with silence. Nobody said why. But they all knew. She was the one mocked by them, someone whispered in a conference room on Brickell Avenue. And now they're gone. The man with the key never gave interviews, never named names. He just quietly restructured every company he had a stake in. Anyone affiliated with that night's cruelty was removed. No warning, no statement, just absence. Sky. She moved aboard the Artemis that same morning. The crew was gone, the cameras were off. She carried a single duffel bag and a new toolbox. She patched the seals, rewired the control hub, tuned the hull like a pianist retuning an old grand. And each morning after, in the harbor mist, she sat with coffee in hand. Simple black mug, cotton t-shirt, her hair tied back, watching the horizon. No speeches, no followers, but those who passed by felt it. She wasn't just here. She had earned here, and no one would forget it. News never broke the way they feared. There were no viral clips, no hashtags, no exposés, just silence. That was the cruelty of it. The punishment wasn't fame or shame, it was absence. Preston, the influencer with a crypto empire, found his next launch mysteriously delayed. Investors ghosted him mid-negotiation. His marketing team disbanded without explanation. Something's wrong, he told his assistant. But when he tried to call his usual backers, the line rang and rang and rang. Whitney, the fashion tech darling who'd once joked about feeding Sky crumbs, watched her runway feature vanish from the Paris schedule. Overbooked, the email read. But no one replied to her follow-ups. The yacht party had been a test, and most had failed. Sky's presence wasn't loud, but it was known. Somewhere along the channel of high-powered dinners and NDA-sealed boardrooms, someone always asked now, "Were you at the Artemis?" The question was code, a kind of social litmus test, and depending on your answer, doors either opened or slammed. And Sky? She never mentioned any of it. When a journalist reached out, somehow finding her work email, she responded with a two-word reply, "Not interested." When an exclusive talk show offered her a platform promising to let her tell her side, she didn't answer at all. But in a private room, lit by screens and soft light, the man with the key sat before a panel of his peers. VC titans, hedge fund board members, acquisition sharks. "We learned something that night," he told them, voice low. "We saw who we reward and who we ignore." They listened. They weren't the kind of men who changed easily, but they listened. And when one of them scoffed, "So what? We give yachts to every quiet mechanic who holds a wrench," the room went silent. Then another said, "No, but maybe we stop applauding people who couldn't fix a faucet if their stock depended on it." And slowly, quietly, the standard shifted. Not everywhere, but in the places that mattered. Back on the Artemis, Sky sanded a portion of the railing herself. The yacht gleamed under her hands. Not a toy now. Not a party trick, but a vessel of her making. She didn't need cameras. She had control. In boardrooms and influencer parties, the names of the humiliated were slowly scrubbed from conversation. Nobody said Preston aloud anymore. Nobody laughed like Whitney once did, loud and reckless. Her circle dissolved. Her sponsors dropped. She took a retreat in Bali and never returned to the States. They hadn't just been removed. They'd been erased. Because the worst punishment among the elite wasn't ridicule. It was irrelevance, and the whispers grew colder each time they resurfaced. Did you hear what he said to her? She held the yacht together while they posted memes. Even now, long after, when someone reached too high too fast, the question returned, were they on that boat? It was never named. Not directly, just that boat. But some names, like ghosts, clung to memory no matter how tightly the world tried to bleach them out. Trevor, the tech startup wonderkind who'd once built a dating app that sorted people by income, found himself alone at every launch event. Nobody liked being near cautionary tales. The Artemis became a legend. Investors tried to buy it. Wealthy guests offered to lease it for retreats. All were turned away. Politely, firmly, because Sky didn't owe them access anymore. The man who gave her the key never returned to claim it. He didn't need to. Sky never asked for favors, but she honored the promise. The yacht never hosted another party, but it was never empty. She ran mentorship sessions for young engineers out of the captain's lounge, taught system diagnostics from the helm, and when one girl, barely 18, asked her how she'd survived the hate, Sky answered with a shrug. I didn't come here to be liked. I came here to stop the ship from sinking. And that became a kind of code. Engineers, whistleblowers, quiet architects of unseen success. It spread among them like firelight in the dark. She didn't give speeches. She didn't name her enemies, but one by one, those who mocked her vanished from the circles they thought they'd conquered. Because power, real power, doesn't need to raise its voice. It only needs to be heard once. The Artemis rested in a private harbor now, no longer a party vessel, but a floating cathedral of quiet resolve. Its nameplate, once gleaming gold, had been sanded down to a matte silver. Not for aesthetics, for truth. Sky never changed much about its design. She didn't redecorate. She didn't hang photos or frame headlines. There were none. Only maintenance logs, handwritten checklists, and the occasional blueprint sketched on napkins. In the mornings, locals sometimes passed her on jogs. They'd see her on deck, coffee in hand, hair tied back, clothes simple. She nodded to the fishermen. She waved to the harbor techs. But no one interrupted her. Because they knew she wasn't famous. She was respected. And in places where ego once ruled, her silence spoke louder than legacy. The man with the key never came back for thanks. But Sky once found a slip of paper tucked into the control console. You can't teach integrity, but you can show what it looks like under pressure. No name, no signature, just that. In the months that followed, a quiet transformation rippled outward. Yacht clubs rewrote their guest conduct policies. Tech circles quietly blacklisted anyone tied to the Artemis incident. Insurance firms denied coverage for repeat offenders from that guest list. No public scandal, just people disappearing from the invitation loop. One day, a familiar voice called out as Sky stepped off the gangway. It was the bartender. No sneer, no swagger, just a man in a windbreaker holding a folder. I was hired to help clean a nearby rig, he said. I'm not here to ask for anything. I saw what you did. I didn't know how to apologize back then. She studied him, not with hatred, with honesty. I didn't do it for apologies, she said. I did it because someone had to. He nodded, eyes rimmed with shame, then walked away. Sky didn't stop him. She didn't need to. Because justice had already arrived, not with headlines or hashtags, but in closed doors and erased names. That night, she sat on the stern deck, the ocean lapping softly below. Stars scattered like promises no one could buy. She held the key once more in her hand, not as a symbol of ownership, but of accountability. And when she looked out over the water, she didn't see the ghosts of who had mocked her. She saw only space, and the freedom they never expected she'd own forever.